While my husband was in the shower, his phone buzzed beside me. A message flashed from his coworker. Last night was perfect. Before I could think twice, I replied for him. Round two at home. She's not here. By evening, when the doorbell finally rang, my husband's eyes panicked. And that was the moment everything I thought I knew about our marriage cracked straight through the middle. I should rewind, though, not because I want to soften what happened, but because to understand why I did what I did, you need to know who I was before that moment. My name is Elena Harper, 34, a middle school art teacher who still paints in the margins of lesson plans when no one is watching. I'm the type of person who remembers birthdays, packs lunches with stupid handwritten doodles, and never loses socks in the dryer. Or at least, I used to be. Most mornings in our small townhouse start quietly. I brew coffee while the sun slants across the kitchen tiles. My husband Mark, 37, drafts inspection, reports at the dining table. He's a building safety supervisor, detail-oriented, calm, the kind of man who alphabetizes spices, who once said he loved me because I made the world softer. I believed him. I believed everything. The day it all started was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that pretends to be harmless. I had come home early from work, still smelling like clay and acrylic paint, my left sleeve smeared with ultramarine blue. Mark had just stepped into the shower, humming off-key the way he does when he's tired. I sat on the edge of the bed to take off my shoes. That's when his phone buzzed. I didn't mean to look, at least that's the lie I told myself. But the notification slid across the lock screen bold as daylight. Jessica. Last night was perfect. I remember a faint ringing inside my ears as if someone had struck a bell. I stared at the words until they blurred. My first stupid, desperate thought was a rationalization. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe they were out with coworkers. Maybe perfect meant productive, but my stomach knew better. It dropped, hollow and cold, and something inside me, something quiet and loyal, snapped. My fingers moved before I could even process the madness of it. I unlocked his phone. He never changed the passcode, never expected danger from me, and opened the message thread. There were more texts. Not graphic, not explicit, but intimate. Familiar. Too familiar. I replied. Round two at home. She's not here. No punctuation. No hesitation. My hands were trembling so hard the phone almost slipped. The shower kept running. Mark kept humming. My entire world tilted. For 5 whole minutes, I sat there frozen, listening to the water pounding tiles, imagining all the nights Mark came home late smelling of concrete dust. And long shifts. I didn't cry. Not yet. Shock is too quiet for tears. Then his phone buzzed again. My pulse leapt so sharply I thought I'd faint. Jessica. On my way. My mouth went dry. The bathroom door was still closed. Steam drifted from beneath it. My heartbeat thudded irregularly, like my body couldn't keep up with what my mind had done. There was a part of me, tiny, trembling, that wanted to delete the messages, pretend nothing happened, swallow the humiliation like I'd swallowed thousands of small disappointments these last 2 years. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there with the phone in my lap and let the realization spread through me. Mark had betrayed me, and not with some stranger at a bar. With Jessica, the coworker he mentioned constantly. Jess said this. Jess recommended that restaurant. Jess has the same sense of humor as you. It all rearranged itself into something ugly. Emotions surged, confusion, disbelief, anger, fear, all layered on top of each other like a bruise blooming under skin. By the time Mark stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair dripping, I had already made my first decision. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I wanted the truth. I wanted to see what he would do. I wanted him to lie to my face so the mask he wore could finally fall. He walked into the bedroom, smiling faintly. Hey, you're home early. Everything okay? I looked at him, really looked. The damp hair, the soft concern in his eyes. The slight curve of his lips, like he had no idea his entire deception was balancing on a thread. Yeah, I said. Just tired. My voice didn't crack. That surprised me. He kissed my cheek. I flinched so slightly I hoped he didn't notice. For the next few hours, I moved through our home like a ghost occupying my own life. I preheated the oven. I chopped bell peppers. I pretended to listen as he rambled about building permits and fire code violations. All the while, my mind was locked on one countdown. Jessica was coming. At 6:42 p.m., the sun dipped behind the fence. The house filled with that dusky orange glow that normally made me feel safe. But that evening, it felt like the light was smothering me. Mark stepped onto the back porch to check the grill burner. I stood inside, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles whitened. Then, the doorbell rang. 3 soft chimes. The kind people use when they think they're being polite. I looked at Mark through the sliding glass door. He froze mid-step, his hand hovering over the grill knob. His head snapped toward the sound. He looked. Startled. No, panicked. In that instant, the last tiny piece of me that hoped for innocence died completely. "Were you expecting someone?" I asked, keeping my tone painfully neutral. He swallowed hard. Too hard. "No, probably a delivery." He wasn't a good liar. Not anymore. My heart thudded, but I walked toward the door anyway, each step deliberate, heavy, fueled by something dark and steady. Mark hurried inside. "Elena, wait." I didn't wait. My hand wrapped around the doorknob. I pulled it open. And when I saw who was standing on the porch, holding a small bag, smiling with far too much familiarity, her eyes widening as she met mine, every part of me went still. The storm had officially begun. Jessica froze on my porch like she'd walked straight into a trap she didn't realize was set for her. Her hand still clutched that small white bag. Wine? Takeaway? An overnight kit? And her eyes flicked rapidly from my face to Mark's behind me, as if searching for an explanation that might save her. "Elena," she stammered, her smile collapsing. I thought. Thought what?" I asked, voice calm enough to frighten myself. Behind me, I heard Mark's bare feet slap against the hardwood as he rushed forward. "Elena, I can explain," he said quickly, too quickly, his breath unsteady. "This isn't what it looks like." That sentence. That pathetic, overused sentence. It ignited something sharp and acidic in my chest. Jessica stepped backward, but the porch railings blocked her escape. She looked suddenly small, like a child caught shoplifting, except this crime was far more personal. "I think we all know exactly what it looks like," I said quietly. Mark reached for my arm. I pulled it away so fast he recoiled as if burned. "Jess," he hissed under his breath, his voice trembling. Why did you?" Her face twisted, confused. "You texted me. You said." "I didn't text you," he snapped. It was almost satisfying, watching their panic collide, their stories collapsing into each other like dominoes. Mark turned to me, eyes wide. "Elena, what did you do?" There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not "we need to talk." Not even "this isn't what you think." Just pure self-preservation. "I read your messages," I said, keeping my tone eerily steady. So I answered one. Jessica's breath hitched. She clutched the strap of her purse like a lifeline. I thought it was you, Mark. You told me." "I didn't." He barked again, the denial getting louder, more desperate. They were unraveling, and the sight of it steadied me in a way I hadn't expected. "Both of you," I said softly. "Come inside." Jessica's eyes widened. "Elena, I'm so sorry." "Come inside," I repeated. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't collapsing. I wanted them both where I could see them. Mark hesitated, then nodded jerkily. Let's just go in." She followed him inside, gaze downcast. I shut the door quietly. No slam, no scene, just a soft final click. The three of us stood in the living room, the warm lamplight flickering across our faces. My home, once cozy, now felt like a locked room in a thriller movie. I crossed my arms. "Sit." They sat. Mark looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Jessica looked at the floor like she wanted it to swallow her. I stayed standing. "Let's start with the easy part," I said. "How long?" Mark exhaled shackily. It was nothing. It wasn't even. "How long?" I repeated. "A few weeks," he mumbled. Jessica flinched. "2 months," she whispered. I stared at both of them until neither could hold my gaze. There it was. Confirmation. Betrayal, laid bare with no more room for excuses or accidental misunderstandings. My throat felt tight, not with tears, but with a cold, clean understanding. Mark tried again, voice cracking. "Elena, I swear, it didn't mean anything. I never meant to hurt." "Do you know the part that hurts?" I asked, interrupting him. "It's not that you did it. It's that you thought you were clever enough to get away with it." Jessica looked like she might cry. "Elena, Please. I messed up. I know I messed up. I never. You never what? I asked. Never meant for me to find out? Never meant for it to continue? Never meant to get caught on my front porch? She shook her head quickly. No, yes. I didn't think. No, I said. You didn't. I let the silence stretch. Let them squirm. Let them drown in their own guilt without giving them any place to swim. Finally, Mark stood, his voice gentle, rehearsed, like he thought he could still win me over with softness. Elena, please, can we talk privately? No, I answered. If you two could do this together, you can face it together. He swallowed. His jaw flexed. Anger replaced panic for a split second, because that's what people like him did when cornered. They lashed at the one they hurt. You tricked her, he said, accusingly. To me. As if I were the offender. I gave her the truth, I replied. You gave her lies. Jessica wiped her eyes. I didn't know you two were okay. Mark said you were distant lately. My eyebrow arched. Mark froze. Oh, I said softly. So that was the story. Elena? He cut in, panicked again. I never said we weren't. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't lie again. He closed his mouth. Jessica sniffed. I shouldn't have believed him. He made it sound like you two were basically roommates. Right, I said coolly. And you believe that. That tells me everything about both of you. The weight of my own words pressed against my ribs. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the wine glass on the counter, to demand answers to questions that no answer could ever fix. But another part, something colder, sharper, was awake now. And that part was winning. Mark rubbed his forehead, pacing a few steps. I messed up. I know I messed up. But we can fix this. We? I asked. Or you? He blinked, stunned. Both of us, our marriage. Our marriage? I echoed. The one you stepped out of? The one you left me alone in while you built something on the side? Jessica looked down, guilt thick on her face. Elena, I really am sorry. I nodded. Good you should be. Mark moved closer. Please, don't do anything rash. Let's calm down and just talk. Mark, I said, calm down? You invited your mistress to our house. You texted her. He snapped. Yes, I said. And she came running. That tells me everything I needed to know. The room pulsed with silence again. Jessica trembled. Mark's breath shook. My heart steadied. Finally, I spoke. Here's what's going to happen. Not tonight, but soon. They both looked up. I'm not staying quiet about this. I'm not pretending nothing happened. And I'm not deciding anything right now. But understand this, whatever happens next won't be on your terms. When they both opened their mouths to speak, I added, get out. Jessica stood instantly. Mark hesitated, torn between pleading and obeying. Out, I repeated. I opened the door. They left. As the door clicked shut, the house fell unbearably silent. I stood there in the dim hallway, pulse trembling, hands shaking, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. This wasn't the end. Not even close. Something had shifted inside me. And the person I was becoming? I didn't even recognize her yet. But I knew this much. Mark would. Very soon. Silence filled the house long after the door shut behind them. A thick, humming silence that felt like standing in the eye of a storm, the winds distant but circling, waiting to tear through again. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the kitchen and turned off the oven. The chicken Mark had insisted on grilling sat forgotten on the counter, seasoning drying on the surface. The tongs lay beside it, abandoned mid-preparation. Like our marriage, a task left half done the moment temptation walked in. My hands steadied as I cleaned. Wiped the counter. Washed the knife. Rinsed the cutting board. There was comfort in the methodical. A quiet control. But the silence cracked when Mark's key turned in the lock again. He stepped inside slowly, alone this time, his shoulders hunched like a schoolboy waiting for a verdict. Elena, he said softly, please talk to me. I didn't look up. I thought I told you to leave. I wasn't going to leave you alone like that. Like what? I asked. Betrayed? Humiliated? Used? He winced. I know you're hurt. Hurt? I finally turned to face him. Mark, that woman showed up at our door because you made her believe she could. That's not hurt. That's demolition. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Can we sit? Please. Just sit. I studied him. The desperation. The pleading. The trembling hands he was trying so hard to hide. Slowly, deliberately, I dried my hands on the towel and moved to the table. I sat. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, leaning forward like he was ready to spill everything. But the problem with confessions is they always come too late. He ran a shaky hand through his hair. It started after the audit in July. Things were stressful at work. I felt invisible here. The word invisible stung. A quiet, sharp wound. But I didn't interrupt him. You were always busy, he continued. School, lesson planning, staying late. You'd come home exhausted. We barely talked anymore. So you decided talking to Jessica was easier? I asked. She listened, he whispered. She paid attention. And I didn't. That's not what I said. But that's what you meant. He didn't deny it. I leaned back, folding my arms. You know what's interesting, Mark? You never once told me any of this. Not one conversation. Not a single attempt to fix what was breaking. He swallowed hard. I didn't want to fight. So instead, you had an affair. He lowered his head, shame radiating off him. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just flirting at first, then. More. I laughed, short, sharp, humorless. 2 months of more. Elena, he said, voice cracking. I know I ruined everything, but I love you. I've always loved you. Love. It felt like a word from a language I no longer spoke. He reached for my hands. I pulled mine back. His throat tightened. I'm begging you, don't give up on us. I'm not making any decisions tonight, I said flatly. His eyes flashed with relief. Thank you. God, Elle, thank you. But, I added, things will not go back to normal. Don't mistake uncertainty for forgiveness. His breath hitched. Okay, I get that. Did he? I doubted it, because even as he sat there remorseful, something simmered under the surface. The same entitlement he used to justify the affair in the first place. The belief that if he apologized enough, cried enough, pleaded enough, things would reset. But something inside me had changed, shifted, awakened. And the more he talked, the more that new part of me sharpened into clarity. Mark ran a hand over his face. Jess won't be a problem anymore. I'm ending it. I should have ended it weeks ago. You should have never started it. He nodded quickly. I know. The clock ticked loudly in the background. A slow, steady beat. He finally stood. I'll sleep on the couch tonight. I didn't argue. He turned toward the living room, shoulders slumped. But as he reached the doorway, he stopped and looked back. Elena, I don't want to lose you. I didn't answer. When he disappeared into the dark living room, I sat there alone, fingers tapping slowly against the wooden table. Then the tears finally came, not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, relentless flow like my body had finally received permission to release everything. I cried until my eyes ached and my head throbbed, until exhaustion pulled me toward the bedroom. When I passed the living room, Mark was lying on the couch facing the wall, shoulders shaking silently. For a fleeting second, I almost felt pity. Almost. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a clarity that felt dangerous. Mark had already left for work. A sticky note on the fridge read, I love you. We'll get through this. I stared at it for a long moment, then tore it off and dropped it in the trash. School was a blur. Students asked if I was tired. Coworkers commented on my quietness. I smiled through all of it. But beneath that calm, something was building. Because betrayal doesn't just break trust. It rearranges the entire architecture of who you are. When I returned home, Mark wasn't back yet. But someone else was. A small white envelope lay on the welcome mat. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Jessica. My pulse kicked. I picked it up, stepped inside, and locked the door behind me. Inside the envelope was a short note. Elena, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not like last night. I want to explain what really happened. Please call me Jay. And beneath that, a screenshot. A message thread. From Mark. Older ones. From before the texts I saw. Messages that painted a very different picture than the lies he fed me last night. I can't talk to her anymore. She always shuts down. You're the one who makes me feel alive. I think my marriage is over. My vision tightened. The Mark who cried on the couch last night. The one who claimed it was just a mistake. Just flirting. Just stress. That Mark had been lying even then. He hadn't stumbled into an affair. He had run to it. Repeatedly. Purposefully. While rewriting our marriage to justify it. And right there, standing in my entryway, Jessica's note trembling in my hands, something inside me clicked into place. Not rage. Not sadness. Not even heartbreak. Strategy. If Mark thought the worst thing I could do was leave, he had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a game. And I had just learned the rules. I sat on the floor beside the entryway table, Jessica's note and the screenshot spread across my lap like pieces of evidence. For several minutes, I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, quiet, almost unnervingly calm. People think clarity feels like a revelation. Sometimes it feels like stepping into cold water. Sharp, clean, undeniable. Mark had lied to me twice. Once during the affair, and again, more deliberately, last night, when he pretended it was momentary weakness. But the messages in the screenshot were worse than the betrayal itself. It wasn't a fling. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a story he rewrote about me so he could convince himself he was the victim. And that felt unforgivable. I read the messages again. I can't talk to her anymore. She always shuts down. You're the one who makes me feel alive. I think my marriage is over. Each line sliced cleanly. A deliberate incision. A calculated dismantling of everything he'd ever told me about us. A marriage doesn't collapse overnight. It collapses quietly, gradually, when one partner is busy building a second life behind the first. I picked up the envelope again. Jessica's handwriting wavered slightly, the strokes messy. She had written it quickly, probably trembling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica was a betrayer, but now she was also a liability for Mark. And liabilities always surface at the worst possible time. I stood, tucked the note into a drawer, and stared at the clock on the microwave. 4:13 p.m. Mark usually got home around 5:30. I had an hour to decide what kind of woman I wanted to become. Tears threatened again, but I blinked them back. Cry later. Think now. I walked to the bedroom and opened Mark's closet. I didn't know what I was looking for, evidence maybe. Proof. Some sign that last night wasn't a singular mistake in a line of many. Nothing jumped out at first. Then, on the top shelf, behind an old winter coat, I saw it, a small red box. Not wrapped. Not hidden well enough. A careless secret. I pulled it down. It was a jewelry box from a boutique I recognized, not cheap. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny diamond pendant. Elegant. Simple. Completely wrong for me. The tag was still attached, and there was a tiny card tucked beneath the velvet padding. For you, M. It wasn't my style. It wasn't my handwriting. And it certainly wasn't meant for me. I closed the lid slowly, letting the betrayal settle like sediment in dark water. First Jessica's screenshot, now a gift meant for her. Every discovery felt like confirmation, not of his affair, but of his intention. He wasn't drifting away. He was preparing a landing place. Coward, I whispered. The word tasted bitter. I placed the box back where I found it, not because I wanted to pretend it didn't exist, but because evidence was most powerful when untouched. My phone buzzed a moment later. Mark, heading home. Want me to pick up dinner? I stared at the message, a hollow laugh escaping me. He was still playing the role, still imagining that a meal, a gentle tone, a handful of rehearsed apologies could erase the wreckage he'd caused. I typed back, me. No, I already cooked. Lie. Let him sit with the discomfort. Let him wonder which version of me he was walking into. He arrived home at 5:28. I sat at the dining table deliberately, reading papers I wasn't actually seeing. When the door opened, I kept my head down. Elena? He called softly. In here. He stepped into the room with hesitant footsteps, like he was afraid the floor might break under him. How was work? I asked without looking up. Strange, he admitted. Everyone was on edge today and I was. Distracted. I wonder why. I murmured. He winced. Right. Yeah. He sat across from me, hands folded, waiting. I raised my head. We need to talk, I said calmly. His shoulders slumped. Okay. I'm not yelling, I continued. I'm not throwing things. I'm not going to ask why or how or if you ever loved me. His breath shuddered. Thank you. This isn't mercy, I said. It's strategy. His eyes flickered with confusion and a little fear. Good. I got a note today, I said. His face paled. From who? You already know. He swallowed hard. What did she say? That she wanted to explain. She's lying, he said instantly. Elena, she's trying to manipulate you. She's desperate. She. She included screenshots. He went still. And that stillness told me everything. Older messages. I clarified. Ones I didn't see last night. Elena, you told her our marriage was over. I continued. You told her I was distant. That I didn't listen. That she made you feel alive. His jaw clenched. Those were things I said in a moment of. 2 months' worth of moments, apparently. He buried his face in his hands. I was angry. I was stupid. I was venting. At my expense. I didn't mean any of it. Then why say it at all? He looked up, eyes red. Because I was weak. Because she was there. Because I didn't know how to talk to you. That's the part that keeps echoing, I said quietly. You didn't know how to talk to me. So instead of trying, you chose someone else. He didn't respond. Silence pulled between us. Heavy. Suffocating. Final. I leaned forward slightly. Here's what you need to understand, Mark. I'm not staying with a man who lies when cornered. And I'm not staying with a man who tells other women our marriage is dead. His voice trembled. Are you saying you're leaving? No, I said, not yet. Hope flashed across his features. But I am saying, I continued, that things are going to change. And you don't get to ask how, or when, or why. I stood. He watched me with broken eyes. But inside me, the storm had reorganized into something quiet and deliberate. Dinner's in the fridge, I said. I'm going for a walk. And us? He whispered. I paused at the doorway. That depends on what I decide you're worth. I left before he could answer. Outside, dusk had settled in, a soft, deceptive calm. I walked down the street, each step sharpening the outline of my next move. Because everything Mark had done, everything he thought he'd hidden, everything he expected me to forgive, I would use, not out of rage, out of precision. The kind that comes when a woman finally realizes she's done being polite. The neighborhood was quiet as I walked, each porch light flickering on in slow succession as evening folded itself over the houses. A breeze threaded through the trees, cooling my face, clearing the static in my mind. The further I got from the house, the lighter my steps became. Not happier, just unburdened by the presence of Mark's guilt crashing against my thoughts. At the end of the block, I turned toward the park. It was small, one bench, one lamppost, a patch of grass that parents used on weekends. But today it felt like a neutral zone, a place where nothing was expected of me. I sat on the bench and let the quiet settle. For the first time since the text from Jessica flashed across that lock screen, I took a full breath. Everything so far had been reaction, shock, discovery, confrontation. But now, with the cool air around me and the distance from my house, reaction finally evolved into something clearer. Strategy. Leverage. Choice. Not the kind Mark had attempted the night before. Mine was different, patient, structured, deliberate. I didn't want to scream or destroy or beg for answers that would only bruise me further. I wanted control. Control of the narrative. Control of my own future. Control of what he feared most. Consequences. Mark had rewritten our marriage to justify his choices. Now I would rewrite my role in it. A phone buzzed. My heart flinched for half a second. But it wasn't Mark. It was Jessica. Jessica, did you get my note? I'm not trying to cause more problems. I just want you to know the truth. Jessica, can we talk? I'll come wherever. The old version of me, soft, reasonable, accommodating, would have ignored her. Or worse, forgiven her. But that version of me was gone. I typed, me. We'll talk. Not tonight. I'll text you tomorrow with a time and place. She replied instantly, Jessica, thank you. Really? I locked the phone, letting the screen fade to black. Talking to her wasn't forgiveness. It was reconnaissance. If she thought she owed me the truth, I would take it. Every detail. Every message. Every lie Mark fed her. Information was power. Jessica, willingly or not, would give me plenty. As I stood to walk back home, a strange sense of purpose settled in my bones. Not vengeance. Yet. Not forgiveness. Ever. Just clarity. The house glowed softly from the outside when I returned. A warm, familiar light that somehow felt foreign now, like I was stepping into someone else's life. Mark was sitting on the couch when I walked in, elbows on his knees, fingers woven together like he was praying. He shot to his feet the moment he saw me. You're back, he breathed, as if he'd been holding his lungs hostage. I told you I would be. He studied me carefully. His eyes slid over my face, my posture, searching for clues, hints, soft spots. What were you thinking about out there? He asked cautiously. I slipped off my shoes. My future. He flinched. Elena, please. Don't, don't talk like that. Like what? Like you're giving up. I'm not giving up, I said. I'm choosing. He sank back down, shoulders folding inward. I'll do whatever you want, he whispered. Therapy? Counseling? Total honesty, anything. Therapy requires two people willing to confront the truth, I said. You haven't done that yet. I told you everything. No, I replied. You told me the version that made you seem less guilty. He froze. I walked past him, into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. I made sure my movements were calm, measured, the kind of composure that unsettles more than screaming ever could. He hovered near the doorway. I don't know what else to say. That's because you don't know what I know, I said. His eyes narrowed, fear creeping back into them. What does that mean? I got a note today. The color drained from his face. And a screenshot. He swallowed hard. She's lying, he said immediately. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words. What did she show you? He asked, voice thin and strained. Your words, I answered. The ones you didn't tell me about last night. He pressed a hand to his forehead, pacing. Elena, please. Anything she sent you, it was taken out of context. I didn't mean any of. Stop. I snapped, sharper than I intended. He froze mid-step. I placed my glass on the counter, turned toward him fully. Every time you get caught, your instinct is to lie, I said softly. Not reflect. Not apologize. Not tell the truth. Just lie differently. He looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find a foothold. I'm not doing this with you anymore, I said. Doing what? He whispered, listening to stories. Trying to separate what's real from what you want me to believe. Feeling like I'm the one who has to dig for honesty. He stepped closer. Then what do you want from me? That, I said, is the first real question you've asked. He waited, and for a moment, I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because this was the shift, the pivot, the moment I felt the balance of power tilt in my direction. I finally said, I want you to understand that you don't get to decide the next step. I do. His breath trembled. Elena, please don't punish me. You punished me when you gave another woman the version of me you invented. He looked devastated. I'm trying to fix this. No, I corrected. You're trying to survive the fallout. He shut his eyes, shoulders shaking. I walked toward the hallway. I'm going to bed. You can stay on the couch. Elena, he called after me. Do you still love me? I paused. The truth formed slowly, like a heavy object rising from the depths of water. I don't know, I said. But I know who I love less than I did yesterday. His breath hitched. And I know, I added gently, coldly, that I don't trust you not even a little. I left him standing there. In the bedroom, I closed the door, not slammed, just a final, simple click of separation. And then, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, a new thought entered my mind like a whisper. If he rebuilt a secret life without me, I could rebuild a future without him. But not yet. Not recklessly. Not loudly. Carefully. Strategically. The shift had begun. And for the first time since everything shattered, I felt something dangerously close to power. The house was silent when I woke. The kind of silence that feels intentional. A boundary. A consequence. A warning. I listened, half expecting to hear Mark pacing, or typing, or breathing heavily the way he did when anxiety got the best of him. But there was nothing. No movement. No sound. My body felt different too. Not lighter, but steadier. Like my bones had rearranged themselves during the night into something more structured, more deliberate. I sat up slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the morning light leaking through the blinds. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel dread waiting for me on the other side of the bedroom door. I felt readiness. When I finally stepped out, the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Of course, he made some. It was one of his favorite rituals, brewing a pot, hoping that an ordinary gesture could patch over something catastrophic. He was standing at the counter when I entered. Hair messy, shoulders slumped, wearing the same clothes as last night. The untouched mug in front of him told me he'd been awake for hours. His eyes flicked up the moment he heard my footsteps. Good morning, he said carefully. I wasn't sure if you'd want some, but I made coffee just in case. I nodded, walked past him, and poured a cup. My movements were calm, precise, just enough to show I wasn't afraid, but also not willing to offer comfort. He swallowed. Did you sleep? Yes. He blinked, almost surprised. I didn't. That's your choice, I said gently, not unkind but unyielding. He flinched, but said nothing. The silence stretched. Not hostile, just full. Heavy with consequences he was still trying to process. I sat at the table with my coffee. He hovered, uncertain, like a guest in his own home. Sit, I said finally. He obeyed instantly, and the obedience itself told me everything I needed to know. He understood now that something had shifted, that whatever power he held before, over the story, over my emotions, over the truth, he no longer had it. I let the quiet linger another moment before I spoke. I want you to go to work today. His eyes widened. Are you sure? I can stay home. We can talk. No, I said. You're going. He nodded, hesitant. Okay. I need space and I need time to think without you hovering. I'm not trying to hover. But you are, I said. You're terrified and terrified people hover. He dropped his gaze. I sipped my coffee. We're not done. Not even close. I'm just setting the pace. He nodded again, more tightly. Whatever you need. I know. He exhaled shackily and rubbed his palms against his knees. Are you planning to leave me? I'm planning, I said. That's all you need to know right now. He breathed out like the words physically hurt him. But he didn't argue, didn't question, didn't try to reframe or bargain. It was the first wise thing he'd done since this began. He stood slowly. I'll go shower, then I'll head out. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As soon as he disappeared down the hall, I pulled out my phone and opened Jessica's message thread. Her last text stared back at me like an invitation and a confession. We can talk. I'll come whenever. I typed. Me. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Neutral place. The cafe on Ridgeview. Don't be late. Her reply came instantly. Jessica. I'll be there. I stared at the screen after the message arrived, letting the reality settle. This meeting wouldn't just be a conversation. It would be a fulcrum. A place where information tipped the scale further in my direction. A doorway out of the narrative Mark had written for me. I slid the phone face down on the table just as the shower turned on. The sound was distant, muffled, like it belonged in another house entirely. Another life. I walked to the living room and took in the space. The couch where he slept. The blanket crumpled. The pillow dented. The weight of his guilt still hanging like humidity. And yet, the room felt different to me. Not like the site of betrayal anymore, but like the headquarters of something unfolding. Deliberate, strategic mine. Minutes later, he reappeared dressed for work, hair damp, expression tentative. I'm leaving now, he said softly. I looked at him, really looked. He seemed smaller today. Not physically, Mark was still broad, still tall, but diminished in presence. As if the discovery and the note and the screenshots had taken up space he once occupied. Okay, I said. He approached the doorway, hesitated, then turned back. Elena? Yes. I'm sorry. I know, I said. But apologies aren't the currency here anymore. He closed his eyes briefly, then left without another word. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, the house belonged to me. The next few hours were quiet. I showered, dressed, made myself breakfast, answered emails, and paid bills. Normal things. Steady things. But underneath the normalcy, a new undercurrent thrummed, intentional, electric, controlled. I wasn't flailing anymore. I wasn't drowning in pain or confusion. I was planning. At noon, I pulled out a notebook, blank, linen cover, something I'd bought months ago and never used. I wrote one word at the top of the first page. Options. Underneath it, in clean, deliberate strokes, I began listing every path forward. Stay, but on my terms. Leave, slowly and strategically. Confront Jessica with the intent to learn. Confront Jessica with the intent to reveal. Therapy, optional, not for him, for me. Financial preparation, legal consultation, evidence gathering, emotional detachment, step by step, rebuilding self without his narrative. The list grew. My handwriting was calm, almost elegant, as if my hand already knew what I needed even before my mind fully caught up. Every line I wrote was a reclamation. Every option was freedom disguised as planning. And then, at the bottom, I wrote one more. Decide who I want to be when this is over. My pen paused on the last word. Over. How strange it felt to even consider that possibility. That this story, his betrayal, my unraveling, the confrontation, might someday be something complete, finished, past tense. When I closed the notebook, a quiet certainty settled in my chest. I wasn't just surviving this. I was shaping it. The door would open again in a few hours when Mark returned, desperate for reassurance I wouldn't give him. But I wasn't waiting for his next move anymore. Only mine. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'd meet Jessica. And the shift that began last night would deepen, sharpen, crystallize. This wasn't an ending. It was the blueprint of one. The next day arrived with a strange clarity, the kind that makes colors sharper and sounds cleaner. A clarity that didn't feel peaceful, but focused. I spent the morning moving slowly, deliberately, choosing clothes that made me feel composed, drinking tea instead of coffee, standing by the window longer than necessary, watching cars pass, imagining the lives inside them, unaware of mine shifting under its own weight. By the time 1:30 p.m. approached, my pulse was steady, my breath even, not calm, but controlled. I left the house with my notebook tucked in my bag, though I doubted I'd need it. This meeting wasn't about documenting. It was about reading Jessica, her tone, her guilt or lack of it, and most importantly, the truth beneath whatever she thought she was about to confess. The cafe on Ridgeview was half full when I arrived. Warm lighting, quiet chatter, clinking mugs. Ordinary. Safe enough. I spotted her immediately. Jessica sat in the far corner, back straight, hands clasped around a cup she wasn't drinking from. Her eyes darted up the second I walked in, and the relief on her face was almost startling, like she'd been afraid I wouldn't show, or afraid I would. I approached the table slowly. She stood halfway, then seemed unsure whether to hug me, shake my hand, or just fold back into the chair. I spared her the decision and sat calmly across from her. She mirrored me with a slight tremble. "Elena," she breathed. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, removing my coat, placing my bag beside me. "We should talk." So here I am. She swallowed hard, fingers twisting around her cup. I didn't sleep last night. I kept replaying everything, thinking about what I should say. Or how I even. She looked down, ashamed. How I let things go that far. Her voice cracked. And for a moment, I felt the faintest tug of sympathy. Just a thread. A fragile one. But sympathy wasn't the goal of today. Understanding was. "Start from the beginning," I said softly. "And I'll tell you when to slow down." She nodded quickly, as if grateful for instructions. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said immediately. "We weren't planning anything. It just—" She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. "No, that's not true. We were reckless. Both of us." Her honesty, at least, wasn't sugar-coated. I folded my hands on the table. "How long?" She flinched. 3 weeks. It started 3 weeks ago. Not months. Not years. 3 weeks. Somehow, that hurt in a different way. Like the betrayal wasn't old or habitual. It was impulsive. Stupid. Sudden. A moment of weakness Mark couldn't excuse with nostalgia or history. "And the night you referred to as perfect," I said. "What was that?" She exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Dinner after work. We stayed late finishing a report. Everyone else had left. And Mark?" She paused, wincing. "He was upset about something. Stressed. I don't know. One minute he was venting and the next he kissed me. And I didn't stop him. My jaw tightened. But I stayed still." "It happened at his office?" I asked. Her cheeks flushed. "No, a hotel." I felt something inside me shift, not anger, not quite. Something colder, more precise. Taking someone to dinner was a lapse. Taking them to a hotel meant intention. She saw my expression and hurried on. "I regret it. I do. But I need you to know something. He talked about you the entire time. Not in a bad way. In a confused way. Like he was trying to figure out why he was risking something so important." My eyes narrowed slightly. "And that makes it better?" "No," she said quickly. "It makes it pathetic. He felt guilty even while it was happening, Elena. I'm not saying this to defend him. I'm saying it because it's the truth. He's torn up because he knows he ruined something real." Her words settled like dust. Annoying, unavoidable. But then she added something that made the dust ignite. "He didn't tell me you weren't home last night." Silence. I leaned back slowly. What do you mean? The text, she said in a whisper. The one you sent pretending to be him. That was surprising. Mark never suggested I come over. Never. He wasn't planning a round two. He wasn't. She hesitated, then finished carefully. He wasn't trying to pursue anything. If anything, he was pulling back. I let her words hang for a moment, tasting them. So Mark didn't initiate. He didn't invite. He didn't plan. But he still cheated. Still lied. Still made the choices that broke us. Why did you message him? She asked suddenly. Why reply like that? I held her gaze without blinking. Because I needed to know how far he'd go. Her breath caught. And? And I got my answer, I said simply. She stared at me, a mixture of awe, guilt, and something close to fear. Elena, I want to apologize. Not because I want forgiveness, but because you deserve better from both of us. If you want me to quit, I will. If you want a statement or proof of anything. I didn't call you here to negotiate punishment, I said quietly. She froze. I called you here because I need information. She straightened nervously. Information? Yes. I leaned forward. I need to understand what kind of man my husband is when I'm not in the room. When he's stressed. When he feels entitled. When he feels bored. When he wants validation. Her eyes softened with painful recognition. You want the truth. I want the pattern, I corrected. And I want to see if he fits one. She swallowed. He stopped himself a few times. Not enough, but enough to know he was fighting with himself. He was conflicted, not malicious, but irresponsible. Weak. Weak. The word I'd been avoiding. Weakness was more dangerous than desire. Desire had motive. Weakness had repetition. And you, I said. Why did you let it happen? She looked away. Because I mistook attention for affection. And because I was lonely. Her honesty, again, disarmed me for a moment. So you weren't in love with him? No, she said instantly. Not even close. That answer mattered more than I expected. Not because it exonerated either of them, but because it told me what kind of enemy I was dealing with. Not a rival. Not a homewrecker. Just a temporary temptation. The real betrayal belonged solely to him. I took a breath, slow and steady. Thank you, I said. For the truth, she nodded shackily. What happens now? I stood, picking up my bag. Now? I decide what kind of ending I want. Before leaving, I paused and looked at her one last time. And Jessica? Yes. Stay out of my marriage from this moment forward. She nodded, eyes down. I will. I walked out of the cafe with a strange sensation in my chest. Not closure, not peace, but sharpened intention. Step 1. Finished. Step 2. Already forming. Tomorrow, I would speak to Mark. Not to reconcile, but to reveal the next move. Mark came home earlier than usual. I heard the car pull into the driveway at 4:47 p.m., a full hour before he normally clocked out. The sound of the engine shutting off lingered through the window like he was buying himself a few more seconds to collect whatever version of himself he planned to present. This time, I didn't move. I waited in the kitchen, arms folded, leaning against the counter. I'd made tea. 1 cup. Not for him. When he finally walked in, he looked rough, tired, strained, like he'd spent the entire day bracing for a hurricane only to realize he had no idea which direction it was coming from. Hey, he said softly, voice fragile. Hi. He closed the door carefully, almost silently, as if noise itself might trigger something. I watched him remove his jacket, hang it on the hook, exhale. His shoulders sagged in a way that told me his courage was running thin. Did you want dinner? He asked, reaching for normalcy like a lifeline. No, I said. He froze. It wasn't the word no that shook him. It was the tone, quiet, measured, unhurried. He swallowed. Did you do anything today? I let the question hang, not because I needed to think about the answer, but because he needed to sit in the silence of it. I did, I said finally, his eyebrows pulled together. Like what? I met with Jessica. He stopped breathing, literally. His chest halted mid-inhale, eyes widening like prey spotting the trap only after stepping into it. You what? He whispered. I said I met with Jessica. His lips parted, but no words came out. He looked like he wanted to sit down but didn't know if that would make things better or worse. When? He asked, barely audible. Today, I said at 2. He closed his eyes, a long, slow blink of dread. When he opened them, his voice cracked ever so slightly. Why? The answer was simple. To get the truth. His throat tightened. I I would have told you anything you wanted to know. Eventually, I said. Maybe. Or maybe only the version of the truth you believed I could handle. He flinched as if struck. I didn't soften. I walked past him to the table, setting my teacup down with care. Sit. He did. Quickly. I remained standing, not out of dominance but clarity. I needed him to feel the difference in our footing. What did she say? He asked, voice trembling. Did she lie about anything? Interesting question. Not, what did you learn? Not, how are you feeling? Not, I want to explain. His first reflex was fear of exposure. She told me the truth, I said, and it lined up with your note. He swallowed again. I could see the pulse in his neck thudding wildly. Elena, I'm so sorry. No, I cut in. Don't start there, not yet. He straightened, confused. I didn't ask you to come home early so you could perform remorse. I asked you to come home early. I paused, letting the moment sharpen, because I need you to hear what happens next. He stared at me, eyes wide. You're not leaving? He blurted, hope and disbelief tangled together. Not today, I said. He exhaled, relief flooding him so fast it almost made him dizzy. Okay, okay. We can work through this, we can. Mark. He froze again. You don't decide the pace of this. He clicked his mouth shut. Good. I walked around the table and sat across from him, mirroring the position I had taken with Jessica. Except this time, I held the power. First, I said calmly, I want you to understand something. I'm not staying because I forgive you. He didn't nod. He didn't move. He hardly breathed. I'm staying because I don't act out of panic. I continued. You broke something. That's undeniable. And now? I'm going to choose what to do with the pieces. He swallowed hard. I understand. No, I said gently. You don't, but you will. He leaned forward slightly. Then tell me. Tell me what you need. I drew in a slow breath. Watching him the way one watches a bridge they're deciding whether to cross or burn. I need transparency, I said. Total, and not the kind you practiced yesterday. His eyes flickered with shame. I can do that. We'll see, I replied. But here's something you'll struggle with. I want space, emotional space, physical space, decision-making space. His brows knitted. Does that mean a separation? Not yet. But you're moving into the guest room. His face went pale. Elena, no, I said again. It's not up for debate. He nodded quickly, realizing that resistance would only make things worse. Okay, if that's what you need. It is. He rubbed his hands together nervously. And after that, I said, I evaluate, I watch, I think. I see who you become when the privilege of comfort is taken away. His shoulders slumped. Comfort. That was the thing cheating men relied on most. Comfort to minimize. Comfort to be forgiven. Comfort to pretend it was all a mistake that floated away with time. So I removed it. I won't yell at you, I said softly. I won't insult you, I won't scream or cry or cling or dramatize. His eyes glistened with something between fear and awe. But I also won't shield you from the consequences. He nodded again, slower this time. I'll accept whatever you ask. I want to fix this. I know, I said. But wanting isn't enough. He lowered his head into his hands, shaking. I don't know how to live with what I did. That, I said, is the beginning of a useful problem. He looked up, confused. Because guilt can scare you into temporary obedience, I said. But accountability can turn you into someone new. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the person sitting across from him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't either. Not fully. Not yet. Elena, he whispered, voice breaking. I'll do anything. I'm aware, I replied calmly. And I'm going to use that. He inhaled sharply. For the first time, he realized I wasn't reacting. I was strategizing. I stood, gathering my empty cup. We'll talk more tomorrow. Tonight, you stay in the guest room. He nodded, defeated. Okay. When I reached the hallway, he spoke again, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. Are you trying to forgive me? I paused, then turned my head just enough for him to see my profile. No, I said. I'm trying to understand whether you're worth forgiving. And I walked away, leaving him frozen in the silence he created. I barely slept, not from pain. That wound had changed shape. It was something sharper now, quieter, more deliberate. By morning, the house felt different again. The air was still, as if waiting for the next move. The guest room door was closed. I could hear nothing from inside, not even breathing. Either he was awake and listening or pretending to sleep because the alternative, facing me, was too heavy. I moved through the kitchen with new certainty. Coffee, toast, window opened slightly to let in the cold air. I wasn't rushed. I wasn't shaken. I wasn't the woman who had once jumped at the sound of his phone, worried what truth it might hold. A truth had already detonated. The smoke had cleared. Now came the blueprint. At 8:12 a.m., Mark finally emerged. Hair messy, eyes tired, expression almost timid. The vulnerability didn't look manipulative, it looked real. But real didn't mean redeeming. It simply meant he was aware he was on thin ice, and every step counted. Morning, he said. Morning. He hovered at the end of the counter, uncertain whether to sit or stand. I didn't offer guidance. He needed to learn how to move without my choreography. After a tight moment, he sat across from me. I didn't want to assume you wanted breakfast together. I don't, I said. But I'll allow it. He nodded slowly. Silence stretched, stiff, waited. He kept glancing at my face as if trying to decode something. Finally, he exhaled. I thought all night about what you said. I looked up briefly. Good. I realized something. He continued. You're not trying to punish me. You're trying to see whether I'm capable of being someone you can trust again. That's part of it, I said. His eyes softened. And the other part? You'll hear that after work. A flicker of panic crossed his expression. Tonight? Yes. He swallowed. Is it a decision? It's the beginning of one. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Elena, I'll respect whatever you choose. But I just need to know, do I still have a chance? I studied him, not out of cruelty, but clarity. You have a chance, I said. But not because you deserve one. He froze. You have a chance, I repeated, because I'm giving myself one. One chance to make sure I don't act from emotion, but intention. His shoulders sank with relief mixed with fear. He nodded. I'll be home at 5. Good. He stood slowly, unsure if he should say goodbye. He didn't try to hug me. Didn't reach for my hand. For once, he understood distance wasn't absence. It was structure. The door closed behind him. And then I did something he couldn't have predicted. I packed a suitcase. Not mine. His. I laid open his black carry-on on the bed. Folded shirts, a pair of jeans, socks, toiletries. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Out of preparation. Every movement was calm, deliberate, final without being dramatic. I placed the note he wrote me, his confession, on top of the neatly folded clothes. Not as a punishment, but as a symbol. His actions traveling with him wherever he went next. Then I zipped the suitcase shut and placed it by the front door. That done, I sat in the living room with my notebook and wrote one last time under the options list. Require him to leave temporarily. Use separation as a test, not an ending. Rebuild life first, marriage after. End this story on my terms, not his mistake. By the time 5 p.m. approached, the house felt like a held breath. Steady, still, waiting. His car pulled into the driveway exactly at 5. Not a minute late. He was trying, visibly, desperately. Good. He stepped inside, saw the suitcase, and stopped dead. Elena. His voice cracked. What? What is that? I stood from the sofa, closing my notebook gently. That is the decision. His mouth opened, but no words came. I'm not ending the marriage today, I said. I'm not filing papers. I'm not making final statements. He blinked rapidly, relief beginning to seep in. But you're leaving tonight. The relief shattered. What? You heard me. Calm, steady, not cruel. You are going to stay with your brother for 2 weeks. You will check in with me once a day. You will not text me apologies or declarations or guilt. You will simply give me space. He looked like the air had left his body. Elena, please. No, I said, firm but quiet. This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary. He stepped forward, voice trembling. Can I at least talk? Can I explain myself? You already did, I said. And now I need room to understand whether your regret is sustainable or just panic. He stared at the suitcase again, shaking his head slowly. I don't want to leave you. You should have thought of that before you gave someone else a night you owed to me. He winced hard. I continued, unflinching. You don't get comfort while I hold the consequences alone. Not anymore. I'm giving you a chance to rebuild trust, but not inside my home. Trust starts outside, where you can't lean on my presence or pity. His voice broke. Elena, I'll do it. I'll go. I just. His eyes met mine, vulnerable, raw. I'm scared you won't want me back. I breathed in slowly, then said the line I had practiced quietly all day. You should be. He flinched again. Then I softened, just slightly. But fear isn't your enemy, I said. Complacency is. If this matters to you, then you'll use the next 2 weeks to prove not that you're sorry, anyone can be sorry, but that you can change. He wiped at his eyes quickly, ashamed. I'll do everything you ask. I know, I said. And this time, I'm going to let you. He stared down at the suitcase, then back at me. Do you want me to go now? Yes. He nodded, defeated but determined. Can I hug you goodbye? I considered it, then shook my head. Not today. His heartbreak was written plainly in the way he stepped back. But he didn't argue, didn't plead. He just picked up the suitcase with trembling hands and moved slowly toward the door. He opened it, paused, and whispered, I love you. I didn't respond. He left. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed wasn't painful. It wasn't empty. It wasn't lonely. It was mine. For the first time since this story began, the house, there, the path forward, all belonged entirely to me. I sat down on the couch, exhaled deeply, and closed my notebook for the last time. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was power. Reclaimed. Quietly. Completely. And as I stared at the empty doorway, one final thought settled into me with a clarity that felt like the beginning of something new. 2 weeks from now, the marriage won't decide my future. I will.